My name is Jonah Fielko, and I'm the CEO of Bracketology.tv, fantasy sports for reality television. We offer fantasy games for shows like The Bachelor, Survivor, Big Brother, RuPaul's Drag Race, and counting. You start by creating a community. Within your community, you can create a fantasy league for each show that you want to play fantasy games for. Within the league, you can choose up to 3 of our 4 game types, and our most popular is the Advanced League. Choose a team of contestants, and depending on what they do and say during the episode, that's how your team will gain or lose points each week. We also have elimination-style games like our Confidence Pool. This is where you choose how confident you are that each contestant will survive elimination that week. And we've also got March Madness-style brackets. Come back a couple hours after the episode to check your scores and watch you climb the leaderboard. Bracketology is free to play, so grab your friends, your family, your coworkers, and head to bracketology.tv for more info.
We are here, everybody, for week 11 of Survivor 44. As always, my name is Randy, and I am here to break it all down. And as you can kind of see by my hair here, I just got out of the shower. So it's been a busy week. We are so sorry for the delay, but actually our Fantasy Outlook powered by Bracketology is going to shift days. So we will start airing this Fantasy Outlook show on Wednesday mornings. So the morning before Survivor actually airs, and that will be how we do it for the remaining 2 weeks, and then heading into Survivor 45. But before we get into the fantasy side of things, as always, let me show you guys what we have coming up for you this week on our schedule. So this evening at 9:10 p.m. Eastern Daylight Times, Abraham and myself will be recapping episode 11 of Survivor 44, and we will also be talking about the news that just broke today that Survivor 45 will be an hour and a half long. It is official because of the writer's strike that is going on. Survivor 45 will be an hour and a half, as well as the Amazing Race following it. That will also be an hour and a half. So we will break all of that down later this evening. Make sure to join in the live so you can interact with us through the Ancient Voices chat. Tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, David and Tegwith will be recapping the episode and giving their point of views on episode 11 with our Survivor Social show. So if you guys have not tuned in to Survivor Social, it is an incredible show. The insight that David and Tegwith bring is immaculate. So definitely go check that out. And then next Monday, Jack and will be back for our Survivor 44 Stock Watch. This is an incredible show where they break down the analytics, whose stock is rising, whose stock is fallen. And hey, that show could also help you set your fantasy teams because they let you know who you should be investing in. So we have an incredible week of action. We've got some amazing guests lined up for you guys next week, but this week, it is the 6 of us just holding down the fort, but we have to get into the reason that we're actually here, guys, and that is Survivor 44 Week 11 Fantasy powered by Bracketology. And we actually did pretty solid last week. So last week I told you to play Carson, Danny, and Heidi. Now, Danny got us 7 points, but Heidi got us 14, and Carson was the player of the week with 20 points. So we scored a total of, if I can do my quick math, 41 points, which is a very solid fantasy week. I also told you guys to avoid Franny, who ended up going home, Jam, who was our second highest scorer last week at 17, and I also said to avoid Lauren, who was our 4th highest scorer at 13. So as always, you can watch the ticker at the bottom of the screen if you want to see last week's fantasy scores. But starting this week, because we're down to the final 7, we are only choosing 2 people to put in your lineup. So I'm going to give you guys 2 people that you should be playing and putting in that lineup of yours. And I'm still going to give you 3 people that you should stay away from. So first up, a player that you should play this week is Heidi. Now, I'm very interested to see who you all play this week because the challenge where you can get a lot of points, and we've seen our strong challenge competitors. Franny got voted out. Danny has yet to win, but he's been very close. Carson just won last week. Obviously, if it's a puzzle, you want to put Carson in there. This week, it is the last gasp challenge, the one where they're basically getting waterboarded, the one where they have to hold their breath and remain underwater as long as they can while the tide is rising. We saw last season, I believe it was Owen and oh my God, Owen and Carla, who outlasted the tide. Will we see it again this year? Who knows? But I think something's telling me that Heidi can win this challenge. And if Heidi wins that challenge, not only is she safe from being eliminated, but that gets her a lot of challenge points. And Heidi has actually been a very consistent fantasy scorer the last couple of weeks. So I would put Heidi in your lineup this week. I know that's not one of the big players if you count like a Carson, a Jam, a Carolyn, but Heidi is definitely someone to get in your lineup. Speaking about Jam, I thought he was going to be eliminated last week. I keep flipping back and forth about how secure I feel like Jam's game is, but I do think it's going to be secure this week, and I think Jam is another guy who could maybe do well at this challenge. So for that reason, I would put Jam in your lineup this week. When he doesn't go home and he hasn't been a threat, he's been a good fantasy contributor. So I would put him in, and I think that gives you two very possible options on who could be taking home the immunity necklace this week in Heidi and Jam. So those are the two people that I think you should play, who you should get into those lineups. Now, the players you want to avoid this week. First person is Danny. Danny continues to be looked at as a strong threat. I don't know if this is a challenge necessarily that he's going to be super good at. So I would avoid Danny if at all costs this week. He scored you 7 last week. He hasn't been the most prominent fantasy scorer, but I'm just nervous that could this be the week that they finally get Danny out, as he's being looked at as one of the biggest threats in the game. And you would think Carolyn would eventually convince enough people to get Danny out. Speaking about Carolyn, she is the second person I would not play this week. Carolyn has been pure entertainment this season, probably the most entertaining person in the cast. Whoever casted her for the show should get a pay raise. But when it comes to fantasy, she has not been great. She is consistently one of the worst fantasy scorers. She got you 3 last week outside of Franny. That is the second lowest. Shout out to Franny, by the way. We all knew that Franny was fantasy MVP. Even the week that she went home, she still managed to not score negative fantasy points. That's insane in itself. But yes, avoid Carolyn. There's no reason. Carolyn has given you no reason to put her in your fantasy lineups. And frankly, the only reason she's been in that challenge is not help you as much as we all think. And unless she plays that idol of hers, I just don't see where the fantasy points are going to be coming from. And then last but not least, the player I think you should avoid this week is, yes, it is Carson. Mainly because I think Carson is the person going home this week. Now, listen, I know we all want to say Carson is winning this game. And I think he can. I think he's in a great spot. He's got a lot of relationships. But coming from someone who plays like this in online games where you have a ton of relationships, this is all going to catch up to him at some point, guys. And this is the final week that maybe the two at Ratu, Lauren and Jamie, could team up with Danny and Heidi to make a move against the Tika trio. Now, obviously, they do have an idol. They have Carolyn's idol that nobody knows about. Would Carolyn play that idol for Carson? I'm not entirely sure. But yes, I think Carson is in a lot of trouble. As soon as they start realizing that he is a social threat and he's got all these alliances made, it's going to catch up with them. And I'm very nervous for the Tika trio in general. I'm kind of nervous about every single week because I'm like, surely they're not going to let these 3 make it to the end of the game. But who knows? You know, they might. We're just taking a shot in the dark here. Oh my gosh, I seriously just made that joke. We're taking a shot in the dark and, you know, kind of picking who we think is going to go home. And surely they're not going to continue to let this Tika trio make it to the end of the game. If Carson doesn't go home, I think Lauren is another candidate. Someone who's kind of being looked at as a threat. We don't really see it through the edit. But you don't really know where Lauren sits in the mindset of all the other players. And then Danny continues to be a threat. So Danny's probably locked in to these 3 castaways likely to get eliminated spots for the remainder of the game. So just to kind of go over very quickly what we talked about today, the 2 players you want to set in your bracketology lineup, Heidi and Jam Jam. I think that's going to be a great duo who can get you a lot of points. And then the players you want to avoid, stay away from Danny, Carolyn, and especially Carson. Keep them out of your lineups. Best of luck with fantasy this week, guys. Enjoy all the content we have coming up. If you enjoyed this, like this video, share it to all of your friends who play Survivor Fantasy. If they need a little extra boost, a little extra help, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you are aware of all the times that we are going live this week to recap episode 11. And as always, I'll see you next week to talk more Survivor Fantasy. Have a good night.